Welcome to the Empowered Birth Series, where I teach you everything that you need to know to plan and get your true, empowered, natural birth. And today we're going to be talking doulas because number 5 on our list of the 26 things that you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth is that your doula might not be the right fit for you. So what do I mean by that? Well, typically in our mainstream birth culture, you're told to hire a doula because they can help you in dealing with the pain of childbirth or helping you understand about medical procedures that are happening in the hospital. They hold space for your partner, and some of them, they have extra skills. Some of them know spinning babies. Some of them do Reiki healing. Some of them know about aromatherapy. Some of them are really, really good at the hip squeezes. And some of them even have additional postpartum services. So you need to understand that piece. And if you want to know more about the different types of services that doulas offer, I invite you to check out some of my other videos or go get the doula guide resource that I have included inside of Your Empowered Birth in the extras. So you just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras and get that doula guide along with the rest of the little missing pieces that I could not fit inside Your Empowered Birth. I also invite you to check out Your Empowered Birth itself because I do talk about doulas and I talk a little bit about my experience when I hired a doula because I was looking at this the wrong way. I was looking at it as who can I get for the money that I can afford at the time, and I couldn't afford very much. And I thought that all doulas were created equal. It wasn't until after my first birth, which was incredibly disappointing, not my doula's fault, but because I didn't know what I didn't know, and this is why I'm teaching the way I am and why I have these 26 things, because they're all things I didn't know when I was planning my first natural birth with my son. And it was also some things that I didn't know even when I was planning my home birth with my daughter. It's things my clients didn't know that led to them falling into the natural birth traps, which I again mention inside my book, Your Empowered Birth. So if you haven't read that book, go and read it or go check out the playlist on my YouTube channel where I read this book to you so you can have it and you can understand the baseline of what I'm talking about here. Because once you understand that, doulas fall into pillar number 4, which is called the right facilitators. Your doula needs to be able to understand true natural birth to do this. And your doula needs to be doing things a little bit differently than a lot of doulas out there. In fact, with my first birth, I didn't recognize that the doula that I had, as great as she was, as much as I loved her and appreciated her, it really wasn't the right fit for me because I don't really do well when people are trying to get me to do things while I'm in labor. When I'm in my labor space or in like some sort of liminality when it comes to creating something new, the more people try to guide me a certain way, the more this is going to trip up my energy and I'm not going to be able to focus on what I need. So even in my personal life, I'm very intentional about the people that I share what I'm doing with. And I'm also very intentional about who I allow in my space when I'm in those modes of creation. And the same thing applies to birth. So, one thing you need to understand about true natural birth is that you really need to follow your own instincts. You can't go by cookie cutter advice out there, and you can't have somebody else telling you what to do in your space. So, when you're planning a true natural birth, I do highly suggest you have a doula. A doula is an asset. In fact, one of my services that I add as a bonus with my clients, if they wanted it, is if they hire me as their coach, they can also have the option of paying a little bit extra, and I will then be on call for them as their doula, which means that I won't just be sending little text messages and updating them, but I will actually get on Zoom with them and I will hold space for their birth. This is what happens with some of my clients is it's like, okay, we're in labor and I'm on Zoom and I'm holding that space and I'm supporting their home birth. But that is a whole big extra thing. And a lot of doulas wouldn't be able to do that because of the way that they've been taught to think about being a doula. And when you're planning a true natural birth, you really need to be having everybody on board with your plan. So today I'm going to be sharing with you, first of all, things you don't want to be worrying about when you're looking for a doula. Obviously, you want to still have an idea, but they should not be your main focus. Number one, you definitely do not want to be price shopping for a doula. If you are price shopping for a doula, what happens is that you could end up giving up on a really good doula who could really stand for you just because she's a little bit pricier. And the reason she's pricier is because she's got over 10 years of experience. Maybe she has attended some very high stakes births, or maybe she has really had those advocacy skills and she knows the subtle ways that the medical system could trip you up. You don't know what you don't know. And when you are looking for a doula, you really want to be focused first on what you need. And then you also kind of think, what could I reasonably afford? What would be a little bit less comfortable for me to do, but I can still do it? And what's way out of my price range? If something's way out of your price range, hey, I get it. There's a lot of people that would love to have me as their doula, and they just can't afford what I'm worth, and I'm not able to help them at that level. That doesn't mean they don't get help. I will still direct them to other people who could help them at that level. In fact, that's part of what my Empowered Mom Circle is people that maybe have services similar to mine, or maybe services that kind of complement what I put out there, so that if somebody needs additional help or I can't help them, they're still not going to be left high and dry and not know what to do, because everybody deserves to have an empowered birth. I am committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me or not. And as you're going to find out, the more you follow my content, my videos, and the more you stay in connection with me through either the email list, or you're following me on social media, or maybe we do work together, maybe you do buy one of my courses, maybe you get my full program, your Empowered Birth Academy, whatever it is, whatever level you're at, I'm going to help you. So I want you to pay attention, because I'm going to give you the secrets to getting the right doula for your true natural birth. Obviously, there's going to be some work that you need to do as well. And I encourage you, if you're not already subscribed to the newsletter, to get on that newsletter, because I do put some tips out on how to hire a doula, how to get your empowered birth. There's also an empowered birth toolkit. Now, this is a resource that's basically a Google Drive, and I have a birth advocacy report in there that stays all the time. I never take that out. The reason for that piece is because I feel that when we advocate for ourselves in the medical system, we really need to understand what's going on and the deep psychology of it, so that you can get the help that you actually need, and you can kind of phase out those care providers that only got in it for the money. And your doula is aware of these. So typically what happens is a doula will go in, and they might be still new to the birth space, and they have all these ideas about how they're going to help moms have babies, and they're all excited about it. In fact, Dawn Thompson even tells the story herself, where she was like, I'm going to help moms have babies and it's going to be awesome. And then what she noticed afterwards, when she was going through her training and when she was in the field, is that there was another piece to that, in how the medical system treated birth, in how the medical system did not facilitate natural birth. And then she went deeper and she got into conversation with the care providers, and she was able to understand that actually they have limitations too. They have fears that come up. They have things that they have to deal with. And the system is just not serving anybody for true natural birth. And this is part of why the birth advocacy report exists. And this is why you need a doula. Because if you are going into this system blind and you don't have any reference of what's actually possible in birth, and you don't know how to advocate for yourself properly, this is when things fall apart. So you don't just want the cheapest doula, because the cheapest doula may not have that experience. You also don't want just any doula. What you want is the doula who has the skill set that you personally need, who you have rapport with and who you feel most comfortable with. Remember, you're going to be pretty much naked giving birth. So if you don't feel comfortable getting naked in front of this person, you probably are not going to be able to have them in your space. So that's another thing you really need to focus on, is like, you don't just want to hire just any doula. You don't want to just hire the one that's cheapest, and you really don't want to do this last minute. This is a mistake I made where I thought I didn't need a doula, and then I got to about 34 weeks and my midwife came in and she's like, "So, do you have a doula?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think I need one because I'm having a home birth." And she's like, "I tell every single mom, especially a first-time mom and especially one who's planning a home birth, to have a doula." And this was new information that I didn't realize that was important. I'm like, "Oh, why do you say that?" And she said, "Well, because the midwife is focused on one thing. You need to have a doula in your space." And I'm like, "Well, I can't really afford a doula." And she's like, "Well, I will help you get one." And true to her word, she found someone who was in her network, who then led me to my doula, who agreed to work for us, just basically covering her childcare expenses. So she did this pro bono, because the thing about doulas is we're not just doing it for the money. We're doing it because we're also trying to, first of all, we want to make a living, obviously, but sometimes we're not charging what we're worth. We're actually doing this for a bigger service. So I have in the past given scholarships. I do payment plans with my clients if they really need them. And at the same time, I'm really looking for those people who are going to do the work, because I know what I can bring to the table. And I know that the moms who pay even a little bit out of their comfort zone are going to go for it. So when you recognize that, when you understand you don't want to price shop, you want to be investing in your birth. This is the most important day of your life and your baby's life. This is more important than your wedding day. If you were planning a wedding and you didn't hire a wedding planner, like, I get it. That might be an extra expense, but you might have other people planning your wedding. Well, guess what? Your family can't plan your birth for you, because if they plan your birth for you, they're probably also bringing a lot of their fears. This is your vision. I don't even plan the births for my clients. Instead, what I'm really doing is I'm finding their vision and then I'm reflecting it back to them. So the thing you need to understand about doulas is that in order to find the right fit for you, I do encourage you to create your birth vision. You can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit. It's sometimes in there, or you can get my paid program, Your Empowered Birth Academy, at empoweringmomsbirth.com/academy. And that will automatically give you every single workbook and resource, every single video, every single core program that I have in there, every single mini course, every single challenge that I've done. You're going to have all of it because I am committed to you having an empowered birth. Whether you work with me any further or not, I'm committed to that. Not only that, but you're not just paying for a bunch of stuff, you're also paying for access to me. So after you've gone through the core of the program, what happens is you might have one or two questions. Maybe it's even about figuring out your doula situation. Maybe you want to communicate something to your doula. Whatever it is, you get a 15-minute call with me. You can get on and we can talk and I can pinpoint exactly what's going on. However, you have to have already done the work. This is why it's self-study. Now, if you were going to get on a call with me to be a client, that's a completely different system. And what I encourage you to have already done is go through the mini course that came with Your Empowered Birth, go through all of the questions that are inside Your Empowered Birth. And then once you understand the core of what I'm teaching, then you have the baseline for me to go through, pinpoint, and be like, okay, this is what we've got. So as a doula, how this translates is with your interview process. If you are already solidified in what you want for your birth, your doula is going to love you. Okay? Your doula is going to freaking love you, because one of the complaints and frustrations of the doulas in my community when I started to get into connection with them, when I was kind of the fly on the wall in the birth space. And I was just thinking of myself as a little birth advocate who was in connection with these cool people, the cool crowd, and it was the doulas and the midwives. What I was hearing was that most moms who are hiring them don't even know what they're really asking for. And they don't have enough time to teach you everything you need to know about true natural birth. So I recognized that there was a piece missing. I recognized that a lot of people who are hiring doulas, they didn't know why they were hiring them. And that is why I created my resource as an extra bonus for your empowered birth. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras. And it really helps you ask the questions that you need to ask to figure out what kind of doula you want to hire. So now that you know the baseline of why you need to really pick your doula properly, now it's time to go into the things that you really need to know when it comes to actually picking your doula. The 3 things that you're going to need to look for when you're hiring a doula. Number 1, what is their overall training and philosophy? There are a lot of doula trainings and organizations out there that teach a very hands-on model for doula training. We live in a society that fears birth. We live in a society that distrusts birth. And it doesn't matter how much outside training a doula gets, if their overall philosophy is that if labor stalls, we have to immediately do something, they're not going to be the right fit for a hands-off birth. This is where, as I said, I loved my doula to pieces, and this is why it wasn't a good fit. Because I recognized at a certain point, my labor was slowing down. She was getting me to do all the walking. She was getting me to do all of the spinning babies exercises, but I wasn't actually in any major pain, and I probably could have rested. I didn't need to do all those exercises. They really weren't necessary. The only reason that they were being done was because she was very hands-on. She had also gone through and she knew the system. She understood that there were limitations. However, at the same time, she knew enough that she had given me a book called The Power of Pleasurable Childbirth, which was basically a how-to manual in a way written through story on how to have an unassisted birth. It's almost like she kind of knew that she was going to need to take a step back. So when the midwife was present, she was very, very hands-on as a doula. She was trying everything that she could possibly think of to get me to progress so that the midwife would not have to transfer care. However, once I sent that midwife away, my doula changed her energy completely. So you need to have a doula that is willing to step back. And when I'm with my clients and I'm holding that space, I'm really stepping back. If I notice that something might need tweaking, I suggest it. And at the same time, it is up to my client whether they take that on. Because as you know, my philosophy for empowered birth is we aim for a true natural birth where you are basically doing it yourself. You are trusting your intuition over anybody else and anything else that anybody else is telling you. You are doing it. And then we only pull back as much as we need. So if I see that my client is starting to really struggle, I will suggest something. Just like when I'm coaching anybody outside of the birth space, if I notice that one of my friends is kind of struggling, I will give them that missing piece. However, I know that the answer is deep inside of them, so I don't give too much. If a doula is too hands-on, you are now relying on them instead of your intuition, and that is when you can be led down a path that you don't want to go. Go and read Your Empowered Birth and understand about the idea of the fast food restaurant dilemma, where you don't know the path to get to where you really want to go. You're thinking that you want to have a 5-star steak, like your mouth is watering thinking about it. They say, I know the path, and they take you in their car and they take you to a fast food restaurant and they're like, but there's a hamburger and that's just as good. No, it's not. It's not your steak. Or they take you to a 3-star restaurant and they're like, well, it's still steak. No, it's not. It is not the mouth-watering steak that you want. I mean, if you're a vegetarian, you can always substitute this for something else that you love. But the idea is that you can taste it, you can dream about it, your mouth is watering thinking about it, And they're basically saying that something less than is just basically the same thing, and it's not. So your doula has to be able to take their hands off the wheel and have that philosophy that you could do this even without them. I know my clients could do this without me. And at the same time, they want me in their space to remind them that they can do it themselves. When I'm on a call with them, especially when they're in labor, I'm watching, I'm observing. I'm usually holding space for dad. Mom's got this, but dad's the one who kind of needs that reassurance to keep going. Because, birth unfolds in its own time, in its own way. And you really need to be able to just, as Ina May Gaskin says it, let your monkey do it. So the next thing that you need to know is number 2, how much have they processed their stuff? A doula who is still in trauma or hasn't addressed their trauma, or they have witnessed too much trauma in the medical system, can become incredibly jaded. They can become incredibly fearful. And you do not want that energy in your space when you're having a true natural birth. You can pick up on it subconsciously, and then if they say something or they move a certain way or they give a certain look or they just have a certain energy or they try to do something, that can suddenly put you in fear. You don't want that. So the doula has to have processed their stuff enough to know that, oh, I'm seeing the same pattern play out from the last client that I had or several clients before, what happened in my birth. But you know what? This is my stuff and I'm not putting it on them. Hey, I am not perfect. I am going to tell you right now that last year when I was with my client and the medical system was literally calling them constantly on the phone, trying to get her to go to the hospital to get assessed and be pushed into a C-section. And then they actually came to her house. I had to do a lot of work internally to stay calm for them. And I was gathering information, but mom wasn't afraid because she already understood how that system worked. And she's like, no, I'm not worried. My husband's more worried about it. I was a little concerned. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that's like, they're trying to get police over here to check on you. Like, this is really scary. Like, this could really go bad. And then when she's like, I need to go to the hospital. Oh my gosh, it was terrifying. And I had to work through that stuff. And I was able to hold space and keep the faith with them and know it's like, you know what? I have imparted every single piece of wisdom that I could possibly impart for them. I am holding that space. I have taught them everything I know. And now I have to trust that they can do this. I have to trust that they're going to come out on top. And they did. However, it was really scary for a while. And that's how it is with your doula. Sometimes something might come up that might scare them. The question is, how are they going to handle it? Not, is this stuff not going to come up? Because it's likely to come up. This comes up even with your care provider. This could come up with you. This could come up with your partner. But how are you going to handle it? Can you face that fear head on and be like, this is not going to stop me. This is somebody else's stuff, or this is my stuff. But even though it's my stuff, I'm going to deal with it because what I want is greater than what this fear is. If they can't hold space for you, if they can't hold space for their stuff, they can't be with yours. So what you really need to know is like, how much of the trauma has your doula processed? And there's a lot of doulas out there that I know they're doing the best they can. And at the same time, I can see the trauma and I can see how they're projecting that onto people. And it's not helping. And I can see that in the mom groups too, where people will say things and I'm like, you just undermined that mom's confidence because you haven't dealt with your stuff and you're not even aware that you have stuff. Where I will own my biases. I will own my fears. I will own my concerns. If I feel that my stuff is coming up, I will tell you my stuff is coming up. In fact, I've even done these on videos and I've told you, or you've seen it in my demeanor when I have to take that breath. and just focus myself, especially when I'm telling some parts of my story or parts of somebody else's story of people that I've helped or listened to, you can recognize the faster you can get over that stuff, the better off you're going to be. So your doula has to get over that stuff in order to be a good fit for a true natural birth. Otherwise, that's kind of floating around in the atmosphere. Your partner's going to pick up on it. You're going to pick up on it. Nobody's going to feel safe. And that leads to number 3, which is how comfortable are they with free birth? There are a lot of doulas out there, and they will absolutely support you in a natural birth or even a natural birth in the medical system. But the second you say that you're not going to have a midwife or a doctor present, they're like, no, I can't do it. Hands off. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I won't support you in that. So there's also a lot of doulas that, even though they're not allowed to catch your baby, they can tell you how to catch your own baby. They don't do any medical stuff. They're not overstepping. They're not doing anything illegal, but they will sit in your space for you and they will facilitate that as a friend. So honestly, if a doula is not comfortable with free birth, they really aren't comfortable with natural birth. Because the truth is, even if you planned to go to the hospital, things happen. You could end up giving birth in the car. You could end up giving birth in the parking lot. You could end up giving birth in the hospital lobby. You can be in the hospital with a nurse basically saying, I have to assess you before I can call the doctor. And the doula is like, you need to call the doctor. And the nurse goes off finally. And then the baby's born and the doula and the partner need to catch the baby because mom's standing. I mean, this happened. It wasn't an unassisted birth planned that way. It was what happened because the medical system decided to say, I'm not going to do this unless you do this. When the medical system dangles a carrot and says, I'm not going to support you unless you agree to intervention, this is why a lot of free births need to happen. This is why you need to be confident to free birth. Even if that's not your intention, even if you're thinking, I want a midwife, even if you're thinking, I want to have somebody there who's medically trained. Yes, absolutely. And just know you can do it yourself. But if your doula is not comfortable with that, that can really derail your natural birth. So your doula has to be okay. Like my doula ended up being okay with it. I was like, look, you know what happened last night? And I don't want that to happen again. So I'm not calling the midwife back until I'm pushing. And it's possible that I might even give birth unassisted. How cool are you with that? And she's like, well, legally, I'm not allowed to catch the baby. I'm not allowed to do any assessments or anything like that. But if you want me to come over and keep the pool warm for you and maybe squeeze your hips and everything, I can do that. But you're going to have to be able to catch your own baby or your partner's going to have to catch the baby. I'm like, I'm cool with that. So your doula is basically facilitating. That's why I said they're not the one that's doing the job of birthing your baby. Nobody is doing that except you, which is why you need to be hiring the right facilitators who are going to basically trust that you can do it. And maybe they'll give you a little bit of advice, like with my client, and she was pushing, and I was like, okay, dad, like you can see the head and say, yeah, it's like, okay, make sure that you are catching that baby. He's gonna be slippery. So make sure you got a good grip on him. And he did it. And then I'm like, okay, she needs to move her leg out of the way so it doesn't get tangled with the cord. And then I was just sitting with them for like about 5 hours after the birth, just sitting on Zoom, making sure that everything was done. And like placenta's out, bleeding's good, like everybody's good. She's happy. She's chilling out on the bed. She's eating. She's glowing because this is her first vaginal birth. And she's like, I did it myself. Whereas she had been robbed of her birth experience the first 2 times. And it's like, you got to make sure that your client is good. And even when my client goes to the hospital, I'm still holding that space. I'm still checking in. And I'm like, okay, where are we at? Do we still feel good about this? Okay, you're going to take the epidural. Okay, you want the epidural. All right, you've made your decision with the epidural. Remember what can happen. Okay, you've got your plan for that. All right, we're good. And then, like, they do it. They go beyond what was expected in the medical system because I'm willing to support a free birth. Now, as I said, I don't do any medical stuff. I don't even give medical advice. All I'm doing is facilitating and holding space. Because again, when you really think about it, free birth, there's nothing wrong with it. It's what happens naturally. If you don't go to the hospital, you will free birth your baby. If you don't call the midwife, you will free birth your baby. If you call the midwife and they don't get there in time, you will free birth your baby. If you go into the car and go to the hospital because you're intending to birth there, you could free birth your baby on the side of the highway. Like, you could free birth your baby in the middle of the hospital lobby or in the hallway, because babies do not care about structures and systems and rules. They don't care. They're coming. So rather than have all these restrictions, and rather than not hold space for a mom who wants to have a true natural birth, I believe that the system needs to be facilitating for you. I believe that with the empowered birth method, when you understand how things are actually run in the medical system and all of the fear and all of the misconceptions about true natural birth, you have an opportunity here. You have an opportunity to inspire your doula and inspire the medical system and inspire your partner and inspire yourself in what you can create. You have the opportunity here to have the most ecstatic birth experience where you feel so triumphant afterwards. And you're like, I just free birthed my baby. I didn't plan to free birth my baby. And because I hired the right doula, they were able to block the medical system from pushing me in a direction I didn't want to go. They were able to hold space for me. They were able to advocate for me in that space. I didn't even know half of the arguments that were happening around me because my partner was also very calm, and I did it. I did it. I birthed my baby. Everybody said I couldn't do it, except my doula believed in me and my partner believed in me. And maybe your care provider even believes in you, but they're not being called in because, I mean, if you have a doctor or even a midwife and the nurse is in the hospital and the nurse doesn't really believe you when you say baby's coming now, and all she wants to do is her little checklist, well, then free birth happens. So we really need to start accepting free birth happens. This is not a rare thing. This is not a miracle thing that they're lucky to be alive. This is literally what will happen. And your doula needs to understand that. So let's recap. First of all, your doula's philosophy needs to be that you could do this birth with or without them. They can't have that agenda of you have to hire me or you're not going to be able to birth your baby. Even with my clients, I'm like, hey, you could go and get every single one of my resources. You could go and get this course. I'm going to make that decision like yours. You have enough people putting pressure on you without me putting pressure on you. I know that what I'm asking for as a fee is a lot. And at the same time, it's worth it. It's really worth the investment. I will give you absolutely everything. My entire genius will be downloaded onto you, and you will be doing something that other people wouldn't even think to do. And it's going to be incredible. And I'd really love to come along for that journey. At the same time, I'm still going to give you everything. It's just not going to be like you won't have me, but I'm still going to give you as much as I humanly possibly can that I've already created. because there's a lot of things that pop up in the terms of the coaching calls that I don't have created yet. It just sparked my inspiration. I'm like, oh yeah, this piece. I need to add this piece, which is where a lot of my innovation of what I've created and already my videos, it's based on what I've done with clients. It's based on questions that moms have asked me. It's based on what I see in the mom groups. It just sparks my inspiration and I teach it. There's no paywall when it comes to my information. So I'll give that out and they can go through the self-study. And if they have a question, I will help them. They can send me an email and it's like, yeah, I'll help you with that. Or there's the free path, the do it yourself. If you really want to get into my brain, then you're also going to want to get the Empowered Birth Toolkit. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit, sign up for the newsletter. It comes out once a week. I download my most recent stream of consciousness, and I also tell you what's going on inside my Empowered Birth Circle. I tell you what's coming up in my thoughts of what I might create next. So I give you hints. I ask for your input. I'm looking right now for more positive birth stories. So if you have had an empowered birth, just reach out to me. hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And either myself or someone on my team will connect with you and see about getting your story out there, because I am committed to you having an empowered birth. I'm committed to every mom having an empowered birth. Every birth can and should be a beautiful and empowering experience. And it's time. It is really time for you to have that. Whether you can get a doula or not, whether you can find somebody in your price range or not, that's irrelevant. But if you really want the right doula for you, then they need to have the philosophy that you can do this without them. So they need to understand that you can do this without them. They also need to have processed all of their trauma and stuff so that they can hold space for you and hold space for their emotions and not project them onto you. And they also need to be comfortable with free birth. So once you have all of those three things, then you can also go and check out the doula guide that I have inside your empowered birth in the extras. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras. Make sure you also read your empowered birth. Seriously, it's going to be the best education you can possibly get on planning and getting your true natural birth, because this was not available when I was giving birth to my son. I wish it was. It's everything that I wish had been told to me. All of those missing pieces that you may not see because other people can't see them, I put them out there. So when you really understand all of the nuances to planning and getting your natural birth, and you've gone through all of the exercises inside your empowered birth, and you go and get those extras, including the doula guide, and you ask the questions that are in that guide on what you need to know before you even start looking for a doula. So these aren't questions you ask your doula. These are questions you ask yourself. And then you also want to combine that with what I talk about with birth vision. Sometimes this guide is also available inside the Empowered Birth Toolkit. It definitely is inside your Empowered Birth Academy, never comes out of there. But inside the Empowered Birth Toolkit, it's very versatile. So again, with the free path, you really want to keep following, like, share, subscribe to this channel. If you are doing the free path, I just want to ask you to please pay it forward, because the more that this information gets out there, the more that we can start changing maternity care to be truly mother-centered, to help doulas to be able to give the kind of support that they really want to give and get them past all of their stuff. Help the medical system as well to facilitate true natural birth, because right now we have this cesarean epidemic, this induction epidemic. Birth trauma is running rampant. There's so many more intervention heavy births than there are true natural births, and people don't even know the difference. And it's just, there's just so much that is missed, so much that you're being robbed of when you don't get to have that full range of experience within the true natural birth. You're not getting those hormones. The bonding isn't happening at the same rate. It can still happen. And it's like going to the store and getting frozen dessert instead of ice cream. There's just something missing. The ingredients are wrong. It's not the same. So when you do invite in that medical intervention, you are no longer having a true physiological birth. However, you can still have more of a natural birth than if you just go the completely medicalized route and the complete mainstream route. And by hiring the right doula, that is going to help you get on that path. If your doula has never supported a true natural birth, they're definitely not the right fit for you. All right, so that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you are checking the other videos out in this series. If you haven't watched the full video of the 26 things you need to know to plan and get your true natural birth, make sure you check out that particular video because that is the whole overview. You can also go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies. That will get you the list of the 26 things so you know what videos are coming up next. And if you have any questions, you can always put them in the chat. But the best way to reach me, the fastest way, is to email me at hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And either myself or one of my team members will get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Happy Empowered Birth Journey, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.